Hey everyone, imagine you're in a situation, like maybe a traffic stop or something even more serious, and you're interacting with the police, and things start to feel, a little tense, a little uncertain. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could just instantly connect with some backup? I mean, like legal support and mental health support right there on the spot.
Well, that's the big idea behind this startup we're looking at today, GoVia. Highlight a hero.
Poetic hero.
We've got a whole stack of articles and reports and even financial projections to sort through. So we're going to really do a deep dive and try to understand how GoVia plans to really shake things up. I mean, essentially, it's an app that acts as like your virtual lawyer and counselor, ready to step in via video chat during a police interaction. But, is this really a game changer or is this just like a tech dream? We're going to find out.
Yeah, well, I think what I find fascinating here is how Govia is addressing a problem that we hear about all the time, which is the need for more transparency and accountability during encounters with law enforcement. Yeah, we hear those concerns constantly. So walk me through this. How does Govia actually work in a real-life situation?
Okay, so let's say you get pulled over for speeding.
Yeah.
You're already a little on edge,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Now with GoVia, you can instantly connect with an attorney or a mental health professional through the app. They're there to guide you through the interaction, make sure your rights are protected, and even, speak to the officer on your behalf if needed.
Okay.
It's like having a personal advocate right there with you.
That makes sense to me. If someone is maybe feeling intimidated or unsure of how to handle the situation. But what about people who might think, hey, I know my rights. I don't need this. Why would they use Govia?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's where the whole highlight a hero aspect comes in. Remember that rating system we saw?
Yeah.
GoVia lets users rate their interactions with police officers, both positive and negative. So think of it as like a feedback loop for law enforcement.
Yeah.
You can highlight officers who are professional, respectful, and truly deserving of that hero title.
So it's not just about protecting citizens, it's about acknowledging good policing, too. That's an interesting angle.
Exactly. And on the flip side, if an officer is acting inappropriately, the app can help you document the encounter,
Right.
which could be crucial if you need to take further action. So GoVia aims to hold everyone accountable,
Right.
both citizens and officers.
It sounds like they're trying to create a system of checks and balances, almost like a digital watchdog for police encounters. But let's get real for a second. You mentioned this is a startup. Can Govia actually make this work financially? We see a lot of apps, come and go. What makes this one different?
Their investor pitch is definitely ambitious. They're projecting some pretty impressive returns. But I think the key to their model is diversification. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Right.
They're looking at subscriptions for citizens, yeah, but also for police unions and even law firms. They're exploring corporate sponsorships, and they're even pursuing grants that are focused on mental health initiatives.
Okay, so that's a pretty wide net they're casting. But let's say I'm a regular person just going about my day. Would I actually pay a monthly fee for this app?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think GoVia is betting that peace of mind is a valuable commodity. Knowing that you have instant access to legal and mental health support in a potentially stressful situation, that's a pretty powerful selling point for some people.
I can see that. It's like an insurance policy for your rights.
Exactly. And remember, they're also banking on the appeal of their Highlight a Hero feature. People want to be heard and they want to recognize those who deserve recognition.
All right, so they've got the app, they've got the big vision. But what about the man behind it all? Who is Giorgio Sabino III, and what makes him tick?
He's not your typical tech CEO, that's for sure. His background is in art and photography and activism. He's someone who's always been driven by this desire to kind of make a difference, to challenge the status quo.
So he's not just in this for the money.
Not at all. What really sparked his passion for this project was the death of Philando Castile. He was deeply affected by that tragedy, and he saw GoVia as a way to potentially prevent similar incidents from happening in the future.
Yeah, that's a powerful motivator. And it seems like he's channeled that passion into a very specific goal, making police encounters safer for everyone involved.
Exactly. And he's not just talking about physical safety. He's also focused on mental well-being. That's why GoVia has partnered with People, Places, and Dreams. It's a mental health support provider.
Okay.
And they're going to be providing real-time access to professionals through the app.
So if you're feeling anxious or stressed during an interaction with law enforcement, you can actually connect with a mental health professional right there on the spot.
That's the idea. And they're not stopping there. They're also proposing collaboration with University Hospital Ventures to further expand access to mental health care.
Okay, so that's a pretty bold move. Are they trying to revolutionize mental health care through this app?
It's certainly a big part of their vision. They believe that by integrating mental health support directly into police encounters, they can potentially de-escalate situations, reduce the risk of harm, and improve outcomes for everyone.
It's a fascinating concept, and it really highlights the potential of GoVia to address, a wide range of issues. But let's be realistic. There have to be challenges, right? I mean, no app is perfect.
Of course, of course. Um, One of the biggest hurdles they're going to face is data security. We're talking about sensitive information being shared during these interactions, legal advice, mental health concerns. They need to make absolutely sure that this data is protected and kept confidential.
Yeah, that's a huge responsibility. And what about building trust? Can they really convince communities that have historically been wary of law enforcement or even technology to embrace this app?
That's a key challenge, and it's one that Govia acknowledges directly. They're going to need to be transparent about their data practices, their algorithms, and their commitment to fairness and equity. Building trust takes time, especially in communities that have been marginalized or targeted in the past.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just about building an app, it's about building bridges. And that's not an easy task. But let's say they do manage to overcome these challenges. What kind of impact could Govia realistically have on the big picture?
That's where the data comes in. We need to look at the real problems Govia is trying to address and see if this app has the potential to move the needle.
Okay, so let's look at some hard numbers here. What kind of issues is Govia really trying to tackle?
Well, you've probably heard that staggering statistic, right? Like $3.2 billion is spent annually in the U.S. on police misconduct costs.
That's a massive amount of money.
It is. And that includes things like settlements, legal fees, court judgments.
Wow.
And Govia believes they can make a dent in that number.
Okay, how could an app possibly impact that?
Well, think about it this way. If Govia can help de-escalate these tense situations, prevent misunderstandings, ensure that both citizens and officers are acting appropriately,
Yeah.
it could potentially lead to a reduction in misconduct claims.
So fewer lawsuits, fewer settlements, ultimately less money being spent on these issues.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But it's not just about the money, is it?
No, absolutely not. It's about justice, accountability, building trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve.
Right, and those are things you can't really put a price tag on. But let's get back to the data for a moment. You mentioned $3.2 billion, but what other numbers kind of paint a picture of the problem Govia is trying to address?
Well, the Bureau of Justice Statistics, they found that 21% of U.S. residents had contact with the police in 2020.
Hmm.
That's a significant number of interactions.
It is.
And within those interactions, there were significant reports of misconduct, things like excessive force, unlawful arrests.
That's a pretty sobering statistic. Makes you wonder how many of those situations could have been handled differently, maybe even avoided altogether, if there had been more transparency, more accountability.
Exactly. And when you start to break down the data even further, you see even more alarming trends. For example, the New York Civil Liberties Union, they found that in 2022, 59% of individuals stopped and frisked by the NYPD were Black,
Wow.
even though Black people make up a much smaller percentage of the city's population.
So we're seeing evidence of potential racial bias in these police interactions.
That's right, and that's where Govia hopes to make a difference. By providing real-time legal support and documentation of those encounters, they believe they can help level the playing field and ensure that everyone is treated fairly, regardless of their race or background.
It's a big goal for sure. But let's move on to something that really caught my eye earlier. Govia's plan to specifically help immigrants. That seems like a whole other layer to this app.
It is. They're calling this initiative Govia Immigrant Assist, and it's specifically designed to address the unique challenges faced by immigrants, especially those who may be undocumented or facing deportation.
What kind of challenges are we talking about here?
Well, for starters, navigating the immigration legal system, it's incredibly complex, often intimidating.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Many immigrants don't have access to affordable legal representation,
Right.
and they may not even speak English fluently.
So how can Govia help with that?
Their plan is to offer real-time video chat with immigration attorneys through the app, providing instant access to legal advice and guidance. They'll also have features for document upload and review so attorneys can help immigrants understand their rights and legal options.
That sounds pretty comprehensive. Are they planning to offer this in multiple languages?
Absolutely. Language support is a key part of this initiative. They want to make sure that immigrants can communicate with attorneys in their native language so they feel comfortable and understood.
So it's like they're creating a virtual bridge between immigrants and the legal resources they desperately need. But how are they going to get this off the ground? It sounds like a massive undertaking.
They're planning to start with a pilot program in 5 cities with large immigrant populations: Miami, Los Angeles, Houston, Phoenix, and New York City.
Those are some of the biggest cities in the country. It seems like they're aiming high right from the start.
They are. And if the pilot program is successful, they plan to roll out the program nationwide within 12 months.
That's a pretty aggressive timeline. What do you think? Is it realistic?
It'll be challenging for sure.
Hmm.
They'll need to recruit a large network of qualified immigration attorneys who are fluent in multiple languages.
Right.
And they'll need to build trust within immigrant communities, many of whom may be understandably wary of interacting with technology or legal systems.
You're right. That trust factor is crucial, especially in communities that have been historically marginalized or targeted.
Now, let's not forget the funding aspect. Expanding to 5 major cities and then nationwide requires a significant investment.
For sure.
Can GoVia really secure the resources they need to pull this off?
It's a big question mark, but if they can make this work, it could have a profound impact on the lives of countless immigrants.
Absolutely. It could be a game changer for people who are often navigating these complex legal systems alone and afraid.
It's inspiring to see a company taking on such a bold and ambitious project.
It really is. And it speaks to the potential of technology to be a force for good in the world.
But technology is only as good as the people behind it. GoVia seems to be acutely aware of the challenges and potential pitfalls they're facing, and they're taking steps to address them head on.
Exactly. They're not shying away from the difficult conversations about data security, bias, and the need to build trust with communities that have been historically marginalized.
And they're not just focused on reacting to problems, they're also trying to be proactive in educating both citizens and law enforcement. They're planning to offer free law classes for citizens, teaching them about their rights and how to interact with the police safely.
And on the flip side, they're developing tech training programs for police officers, focusing on de-escalation techniques, cultural sensitivity, and how to handle situations involving mental health crises.
It sounds like they're trying to create a more informed and empathetic environment for these interactions to take place.
That's exactly right. They believe that education is key to preventing misunderstandings, reducing conflict, and building stronger relationships between law enforcement and the communities they serve.
It's an admirable goal. It'll be interesting to see how these initiatives play out in the real world.
Absolutely. We're talking about a company that's not afraid to push boundaries, to challenge the status quo, and to use technology in innovative ways to try to solve some of society's toughest problems.
It's a bold vision, and it raises a lot of questions. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface here. We've talked about the app, the vision, the challenges, the financials. But at the end of the day, you have to wonder, can one app really change a system as complex and as entrenched as law enforcement and immigration?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no easy answer. I mean, yeah, some people might say it's naive to think that an app can solve these like deep-rooted societal problems.
Right. It's like you can't put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Exactly. But I think it's also important to acknowledge the potential for technology to be a catalyst for change.
Right.
We've seen it happen in other areas of our lives.
Sure.
So why not here?
I mean, think about how ride-sharing apps disrupted the taxi industry, or how social media changed the way we communicate. Technology can definitely shake things up.
Exactly. And GoVia isn't just a passive tool. It's designed to empower individuals, to give them a voice, and to hold those in power accountable.
And that accountability piece is really crucial, isn't it? Because right now it often feels like there's a lack of transparency and a lack of recourse when things go wrong in these really sensitive situations.
Yeah, that's one of the core issues GoVia is trying to address. They're trying to shift that balance of power to create a system where everyone feels heard and protected.
And they're not just focusing on the negative, right? They're also trying to highlight the positive. I mean, the Highlight a Hero feature is a really interesting way to recognize and reward good policing.
Absolutely. It's about acknowledging that there are good officers out there who are committed to serving their communities with integrity and respect. And by giving citizens a platform to share their positive experiences, it could help build trust and foster a more collaborative relationship between law enforcement and the public.
It's like they're trying to change the whole narrative around policing to move away from that us versus them mentality that often pervades these conversations.
I think that's a really important point. GoVia isn't about demonizing law enforcement. It's about creating a system where everyone is treated fairly and with dignity.
And that goes for both citizens and officers.
Exactly. It's a two-way street. And by promoting education and understanding on both sides, GoVia hopes to create a safer and more just environment for everyone.
But let's be real, no solution is perfect, right? I mean, there are bound to be unintended consequences.
Of course, every innovation comes with its own set of risks and challenges. And one concern is that the app could inadvertently exacerbate existing biases.
Okay, how so?
Well, if the data being collected through the app is skewed, either because of who's using it or how it's being used, it could reinforce existing prejudices and lead to unfair outcomes.
So they need to be really careful about how they're collecting and analyzing this data to make sure they're not perpetuating harmful stereotypes.
Absolutely. They need to be transparent about their algorithms and ensure that their systems are designed to promote fairness and equity.
And what about the potential for misuse? Could this app actually make people more vulnerable in certain situations?
That's a legitimate concern. Some people might feel emboldened to record encounters with law enforcement even when it's not safe or appropriate to do so.
Right. It's like the camera doesn't always tell the whole story.
Exactly. And in some cases, pulling out your phone to record an interaction could actually escalate the situation and put you at greater risk.
So there's a fine line between empowering people and encouraging potentially reckless behavior.
There is, and that's why GoVia needs to be very clear about the limitations of the app and the importance of using it responsibly and with good judgment.
Yeah, it's a lot to consider. It's clear that this app has the potential to do a lot of good, but it also comes with some serious risks that need to be, carefully addressed.
I think that's a fair assessment. GoVia is a groundbreaking innovation. It really could fundamentally change the way we interact with law enforcement and navigate complex legal systems. But like any powerful tool, it needs to be used wisely and with a deep understanding of its potential impact.
So where does this leave us? What should people be thinking about as they process all this information about GoVia?
I think the key takeaway here is that technology has the power to be both a force for good and a source of harm. And it's up to us as individuals and as a society to decide how we use these tools and to hold those who create them accountable for their impact.
It's not just about downloading an app, it's about engaging in a broader conversation about the kind of world we want to live in.
Exactly. And I encourage everyone listening to explore the sources that we've discussed today, to do their own research and to form their own opinions about GoVia and the issues that it raises.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the, innovative features of GoVia to the complex ethical and societal questions that it presents. It's a fascinating story that's still unfolding, and we'll be watching closely to see how it all plays out.
It's a story that's relevant to all of us, regardless of our background or our experiences. It's a story about power. It's a story about justice. It's a story about the search for solutions to some of our most pressing social problems.
And it's a story that's worth paying attention to. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of GoVia. We hope you found it informative and engaging and thought-provoking.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.